How you guys doing? This is Andrew at FloryPB, and today we're going to do something a little cool. These are 3 customer markers that I have. These 2 were sent to me by a guy named Andrew in California. This one was sent to me by another guy named Andrew in Illinois. I don't know what's about this guy's names, but I like these guys. I'm doing all 3 of these together, basically. I'm going to break them all down, clean them, and build them all back up. And the reason I'm doing them together is because these are a great example of the golden years of WDP as a company. All 3 of these markers are basically, this is the A4. The first low pressure Angel was the 04 Speed. This is the one that came after. This was the high-end Angel in the day. So this was basically the first, high-end, low-pressure Angel right before the A4 Fly that actually had the eyes and was a better marker because of that, but it's a very good marker. This was definitely the workhorse of the Angel. The 05 Speed came out right after them, right after the A4s the next year. These were great because it took everything that these had, gave it a beautiful frame, gave it a 9-volt battery instead of the rechargeables that no one liked at the time, and was just a great marker as well. Switched over to this style reg, but then the G7. This is actually a G7 Fly, but minus the barrel, it's basically the same thing as a regular G7. There's one less veneer wheel on it too, but that's no problem. This is the end of the peak to me personally. I don't like the A1. That's APS. That's Chinese made. It's smaller. It doesn't make sense. It's just not the progression that these were going. This is the progression that it was going in. So I want to take them apart together. I have 3 bins set up down by my feet. I'm going to keep everything separated so I don't switch parts on the markers. But I want to do it all together so you can see the markers, see the differences, see the progression through time. I think that would be an interesting way to do this. So we're going to start with the oldest one first, the A4. Now I'm trying to make sure I have everything I need on my workbench, but I might have forgot a couple things. Just going to pull the barrel off, and we're going to take them apart one at a time, same way. I'm going to start with the HPR, the mini reg. Oh, you bastard. Now this is the last Angel that didn't have a cartridge valve reg, but I want to show you there's really no difference between the regs, whether it be cartridge valve or the old screw-ins. Just the cartridge ones made it harder to put an aftermarket reg on the marker. They do have great macro fittings they used. So this is the A4 mini reg. It's a little bit different than the older mini regs that came on the IR3s and the LCDs, but not much. Just a little bit different pressure range. That's all it does differently. Still got the shitty C-clip. Oh, it's hard to see. C-clips in. Came out of there. Yep, got them all. Nope. Doesn't want to come yet, so take out the number 3. This one's a little grody feeling. What the fuck? A little rust on the end of it. That's making it rough to feel. Just trying to pull out the components because we need to get rid of them. There it goes. Okay. There's all the components in the old mini reg, the old style, the non-cartridge valve. Now we're going to put this marker off to the side. Put those components off to the side. Pull out the 05 speed, the middle of the road. God, I hate this cartridge reg. You don't want to hear that noise. I mean, I don't really know what the cartridge regs were for. I want to show you there really is no difference in the performance of the reg, and it's just more complicated in how to get the damn thing off the marker. Might be a number 2. It is. There's this little set screw in the front you got to worry about. These are all out. Always the funnest to break them free. Especially when they're all jammed up, don't want to come. Pain in my ass. It's almost there. We're at a leverage point now. There we go. So here's the cartridge from the 05 speed. Very similar in size to the mini reg, right? Well, that's for good reason. Oh, look at that, a C-clip, just like that C-clip. Huh. Check out the pistons. Identical. They didn't change the piston. They redid the entire reg, but they didn't change the only part that can actually make a difference in the regulator. That all looks exactly the same as well, right? Basically because it is. So now the latest and greatest, the last one of the bunch. Is it going to be different? Ooh, why is this so screwed up? Might be some issues going on with this one. Oh, you prick. All right, so here's the new cartridge from the G7 Fly. I still see a brass piston. I still see the same C-clip. Check out the bottom though. See if I can zoom in for you. Focus. We have more holes, so more air can flow in. Great, brilliant. Is that much better? Not really. Other major difference you see. You have a bigger stack here, a bigger length for the air to sit, a bigger volume. They were trying to increase the volume of air to make the reg act faster, to make it do better, but it's not really going to do much because the piston hasn't changed diameter. C-clip. Sticky. Nothing different there. Exactly the same as the previous generations. So any differences here? Same diameter piston. Same through hole. It's identical. It never changed. They have the same reg performing the same way in all these generations, but they just made it look different and tried to increase the airflow in basically incorrect ways. Didn't do it well. So let's put all this stuff away in the proper bins and move on to the next part. We'll go back to the A4. This has this weird gauge back here. Very strange gauge. They're kind of cool in a way. Oh, very hard to take off now. Only thing this gauge did poorly was it hurt your disassembly. Because you gotta take the gauge off to get your VASA off. They're a very unique gauge. You've never seen one of these. They're not easy to read per se, but very unique. I'm pretty sure SMC made these gauges because they always had these weird little gauges. See all these zeros? The gauge dial spins instead of the needle here. So that will turn into probably around a 3s. You'll see a bunch of 3s, which means 300 PSI, or a bunch of 2s. So that's how you get the pressure of your marker. You never really used it too much though. It's a very weird little feature they put on the A4, and then it just disappeared because the A4 Fly did not have it. Use our number 3. Get rid of the back O-ring in the or the back screw in the flash tank. Need number 4 for the middle one. That's a little loose feeling. Nah, it can't be a 5, has to be a 4. Hope someone didn't screw with this. Doesn't feel that tight. Well, here goes nothing. If don't want to have to drill this screw out if we don't have to, but we'll see what we can do. Alright, good. It doesn't look that bad. Just a little not that tight. Flash tank O-ring. It is still an O-ring with these, which I personally like better. Put the gauge back on it for right now. This goes in the box. This is the flash tank assembly for an A4 or an A4 Fly. You can switch them between each other. It won't matter. Thinking about it, you could probably put it on an older Angel too, but don't take that as gospel. Gonna get rid of the trigger for right now on the 05 speed. I don't know why it's not attached, but it's not. So Goes in the bin. Same bolts. Same Allen keys. Just more difficult to get to because you can't see it. So you gotta kind of feel for it. This one's same setup with the O-ring and the flash tank. And there's the cartridge reg off. So that's like that. Same setup with the G7. So what the fuck is wrong with you? That's weird. I'm gonna replace this bolt for the guy because it's a little blown out. Doesn't work with my round head side, but it works with the square head side, so there's just enough bite left in it. And here's where it changed. They opened up the air passage huge, trying to get more air through it. Hoping and praying that the same size piston and the same regulator configuration would do better with more airflow before and after it, but not through it. So it wasn't exactly a beautiful idea, but maybe it's a little more effective. We can test that going forward in the future if we really want it to. Let me put all my stuff off to the side. Pull apart the trigger frame right now. We got our 2.5 millimeter. And of course this one's a 90 grip setup, which was the only way that this marker came. The other two came in a 45 setup because by the time the A4 Fly came out, people were starting to hate on the 90 frames and they liked the 45 frames again. So they started offering, the majority of the 05 speeds came in 45 frame, but you could still get a 90 frame if you wanted it. The same with the base G7. And the 06 speed as well I know came in a 90 frame, but I don't know if I've ever seen a G7 Fly in a 90 frame. I just don't know if they ever made them. Doesn't matter, the frames will interchange between them, but I don't know if it's a factory configuration. If anyone knows, that'd be pretty cool to find out. So we got the grip off, 6 bolts. No real difference between them. Two screws to hold the board in. Gently pull the wires out. Now these two very thin wires are to the Sensi setup. Very delicate wires for a system that doesn't even work that well. Pull them out just so. And get the board out. So that is the board. We'll pull the buttons out on this one. And we'll pull the LED cover out on it as well. Let's take the whole frame off. Get it out of the way. little sticky. So if we look, we don't want to try to take out the Sensi pad. You can replace it basically with some BS, with a piezoelectric setup. But if you look at it, let's try to zoom in there for you. If you're ever working on one of these, you actually want to make it work, or you want to keep it working, because, you know, the COP system that came in the IR3, that was basically a piece of shit, because you had to calibrate it yourself every time you went to go play. So it just made it a tedious task that just sucked. So you didn't want to do it. These are auto-calibrating. It calibrates itself. If you just take 3 slow shots right in the beginning, before you play, it's calibrated, it's in, and it actually works, especially if you have a decent hopper like a rotor or a spire. It will keep you playing well, and you're not going to have chops with this marker. But right down in there, this is the piezoelectric strip. This is the thing that senses the ball when it bounces on the little, the plastic piece that comes down. It bounces, it takes a reaction there. That sends a signal to the board telling them there's a ball's in place. It's not perfect, it's not as good as eyes, but it does work. You just look and you make sure that this little metal piece is intact. If it's intact and it looks like the wires are intact, the system's fine. Do not try to take this out of the frame. If you try to take this out, it's so brittle, it's just going to break apart and shatter on you. They're so brittle at this point in time. This tape's so thin too here, and you just don't want to get rid of it because it's a bitch to put these wires back if you don't have it. So just leave it alone if you can. And I'm not going to wash the frame. I'll wash it by hand to get everything off of it so I don't screw with that. And we're just going to let it be. This screw is a standard. It's that weird thread they use. Someone put Loctite in it. That's beautiful. Wow, look at that. Let's take our pin. The pin looks pretty good. Trigger's not so bad. And that's the full breakdown of an A4 and an A4 fly frame. Let's pull out the veneer wheels as well. We have 2 screws here. Put this back with the standards so I don't cross them. These screws are just locating screws. They don't really do anything besides keep the veneer wheels so they can click. It's very strange they would put so much effort into it, but it was a really cool idea at the time, because especially when semi was the way you were supposed to play, and it actually mattered. Your finger speed and your trigger setup actually mattered then, because you're not just pulling it a few times to make it shoot the same balls a second. So it's really nice to tailor your game that way, or tailor your trigger feel to you. That's all grody. There we go. So we got everything broken down that's not an essential body member at this point. On this marker, we're going to put all this stuff up to the top. Take note of the board shape. That's going to be a big thing I want to present going forward. Now, the next guy. This one's all a little screwed up as is, but no more wraparound grips with this. These are panel grips. Guess it was cheaper to do panels. Most likely it was cheaper to do panel grips than the wraparounds. Thing looks okay there. Missing a screw. We'll replace that. And I keep calling them screws and bolts. There's really no difference. A bolt normally has a nut on it, though. A screw does not. It goes into a threaded hole. So these are all technically screws, but that's really neither here nor there. So this, even as brittle as the two tiny wires that went to the Sensi setup was for the A4, the eyes that Angel used, super sensitive. Don't grab them weird, be very gentle. Lift them up straight, don't pinch on them or anything. Very gentle. Pulls out, missing the back bolt, that's fine, or back screw I should say. Well, that one's a little... Ooh, that one's a little grody too. All right. Check that out. Angel really liked keeping their frame shapes very similar. The whole front setup similar. They added this little back swale because they got the bump out. If you ever have a chance to play with a 45 frame Angel of the 05 speed up into the G7 vintage, just appreciate how nice the frame feels in your hand. This little swale that they do here, it's a beautiful frame. And I'm so happy they did it with the 05 speed, not just the Premier marker, the G7s. Even though 6-speed has the same frame. It's just such a nice feeling frame. So all the components are out on this one. We'll take the veneer wheels out. There is no bolts holding them in. Good to go. Missing a magnet as well. I think that's actually on the trigger that's in the bag. So the trigger setup on this, I'll show you better with the G7. There's two screws here that hold the trigger in, and what it really does, it was a pretty ingenious setup because it lets the trigger be dual roller bearing, and it also allows it to have basically zero slop. There's never been a less sloppy trigger on a paintball marker as there was on these markers here. The 05 speeds, the 06 speeds, the G7s, the G7 flies just had a beautiful trigger setup, so this thing was just perfect. So that's this frame, broken apart. With the grips, we'll put them over here. My battery's gonna die soon, so let me finish this one up, and then I'll change the battery and we'll start doing some more stuff. So the grip frame shape did not change. They added a little more milling, cut a little weight, made it look a little classier. They still went with the panel grips on the G7s, but they added a little piece here that was supposed to have rubber in it, just to give it a little more premium feel over what the speeds were. Because the markers are pretty identical. They just did that. It was a way to distinguish the markers, make them a little different, and cut a little weight technically as well. I appreciate those little things they did to give you a little higher end feel to the marker. But it really didn't do shit to the marker itself. Oh man. So this is a different wire cable than normally. I guess that's a new one. So someone already broke the eyes in this once. Someone lost a button and they put it with a stainless button in there. It's all good. Come on out. This board is going to be finicky. It is tight in there. I think my camera just gave a little fart on that one. We're going to pull the frame off, then try to get the board out. And then we'll replace the batteries in my camera. Be very gentle. You want the wires to come out nice. Nice and easy like that. They switched down to one veneer wheel instead of the two. No more bolts holding it in, which is kind of nice. Just one wheel there. The G7s, the stock G7s, they had 2 wheels still. It was just the 06 Speeds and the G7 Flies. They decided to cut it down to 1 wheel. Alright, the trigger's going to have to come out too. So the trigger, we got the 2 bolts up here, the 2 screws. And again, it makes it so perfect. The side-to-side play is just not there. Beautiful trigger setup with these Angels. If you like to walk a trigger or shoot semi, just a great shot comes out of these because of that trigger feel. So we're gonna toss the 3. There's the metal one. No one really cares. As you can see, they recycled a lot of their components there. They had a lot of those left over. These left over from the IR3. They used it again in the A4. You know, even this plastic. This plastic is basically, at this point it says eyes, but I have some older ones that don't even say eyes from like the A4 flyboards. They just use the one that said Sensi, and there's not even eyes for this, the eye port. It just says Sensi on it in the plastic. They just reused their plastic casings. By the G7, I guess they were able to put it correctly and put the eyes on it. So yeah, it's very similar. The A4, the G7, the screens are the same. The shape is the same. The plastic's the same. The IR sensor's there in the back. It's just consistent. It's very consistent, we'll call it. So let me change my batteries in my camera real quick. I'll put all this stuff away. We'll start breaking down the bodies a little bit. Alright guys, we're back now. Now we have the frames off, the regulators off, the VASAs, the cartridge regulators, everything's together, so it's just the body. Next we're going to pull off the detents, eye covers, eyes, get the rest of the front end off this thing. We'll pull off the Sensi rods. We'll start with the A4 and get that broken down. Now these ball detent covers, these are the old homage, and they need a nickel to get them to come off correctly. You can try to use a screwdriver, it's going to fuck them up. It slots in perfectly in nickel. I don't know why a nickel is the synonymous with paintball, because I don't really carry nickels around anymore. They're kind of worthless. But even like the die with the DSR, to get the battery out, you need basically a nickel. But they are fairly soft, so they won't scratch up your anodizing. It's actually in pretty good shape compared to the rest of this marker. And every video I've done, I love the spring detents. They're just good. Especially the screw-in ones like these. These are just great detents. They'll last forever. Just clean the dirt out of them, and when they get dirty, just clean them off. And they'll just continue to function forever. They'll always get out of the way of the ball. No problems with them at all. Next, we're going to pull the Sensi rod out. You always want to check the top of it to make sure it didn't get chewed off. This one's okay. You'll notice because it'll be noticeably short. Next, we're going to pull out the pad. And there's 2 O-rings to seal off the chamber. You need those, or you can get a weird leak out of the bottom of your gun. You're not going to know where it's coming from. But take note of this particular mill job there. How that was set in. That was the same way since the IR3. If we move over to the more modern marker, the 05 Speed. We got to take the eye covers off and the detent covers. Be aware there is a spring. You touch it, it is spring loaded now. So put a finger on it and let it come up slow. Real clean detent. That's nice. Now the eye cover, there's 2 little tabs. Just pull them away nice and slow like that. Let's get the covers off entirely, then we'll try to get the eyes out gently. And this is going to be the same procedure with the A4 fly, any G7s, the 06 speed, anything toward the A1. They use this setup. Now you pull that carry out, and lo and behold, see that? They didn't even change their milling sequence there. They just kept the same thing. Added a couple more holes. So that's pretty neat to see the lineage of these. So that doesn't want to just come out real easy, which always sucks. So we gotta try to poke them out. Ooh, that bolt's in there. My tip's a little blunted on this. You don't want to pierce them, but you just gotta pop them out. There they go. Popped out. They look pretty good. A little dirty. We'll clean them up with some isopropyl alcohol. And those are out. The detents are out. This is going to be the exact same situation on the G7 fly. Except this has an aftermarket set of eyes in it. Which look pretty nice, actually. Very nice, I would say. I haven't dealt with these yet, but it's not the thin, flimsy ribbon. It's a cable, actually. Gently. Gently. Feels like the same rubber. The carrier looks a little different. Just make a note on that. The 05 Speed has this extra little block attached to it that goes in the trigger frame, where the G7 Fly, they made that redundant. They got rid of it. It's just flat top there, so it just fits in. And again, they have the same milling sequence on that. Same pattern, did not change it. Didn't have to. Alright, so let's look at these. It's an aftermarket set. Someone pinched it a little bit there, but it's probably okay. I'm not even going to zoom in because it's a waste of time for us. Yeah, it's a nice ribbon. This is much nicer than this ribbon. I like the strain relief a little bit on here. It keeps this more rigid in that corner, because this could wear out over time, but it's a lot nicer setup than this one, because it's actual wire, where this is just that thin pressed on the sheet. Pretty nice. I like what they did there. Alright, so let's take all this fiddly little stuff, put it away. Be careful with the springs, do not lose the springs. And take the back apart on this now. We gotta take the back plate off. Don't take off the solenoid. Use our 2.5 millimeter. Remove the 2 countersink screws in the back. Keep your finger on it because it is spring loaded. Get the spring out of there. We got to replace this battery, so we'll take the plate off. Now some guys, they like to put the spring around this piece, which I think is the actual intent of it. I just like to run it in it. Doesn't bind up as much in my opinion. This is that switch in the A4. You see that going forward. They switched this to a rail system, a T-slot with just one bolt or one screw. And I think it was the right way to go. Definitely a lot cleaner, more professional feeling than having the two little bolts or the two little screws are super hard to get out correctly and everything. So we pulled the solenoid out. Just make sure you don't catch any of the wires. We'll pull these wires through. Just, I'm not looking what I'm doing, so it's harder than it is. Alright. And the battery comes out. So now the 05 speed's a little different. There is no battery in that second tube. That second tube is just there. Just because. It is an angel. So that one was wrapped. It's a little bent. Which is one of the disappointing things, because they had all this opportunity to do something else. If they were going to keep that tube there, which they were for whatever reason, just because it's the look they want it. But they were keeping the second tube there, so they should have did something better with it. And just let it sit there. But I digress. So, solenoids are exactly the same for these two generations. There's no true difference there. They're 3-volt solenoids with the lower voltage setup. The nipple's broken on this one. We'll replace the nipple. And that's a part. They're basically identical. It's not really a surprise. It's one generation newer. Now this is where it gets a little different back here. We first have to take off the cam arm here. So there's a little screw right in there. It's a real fiddly one. This is where I actually prefer the 06 speed to the G7, because this cam is just one little pivot. It's not a whole arm that goes over your on-off switch, which I don't know exactly why you need it to go over your on-off switch. I guess it's a look. It looks real clean. But don't lose this screw. It's a pain in the ass. I've seen people strip this screw out. I had to repair one on an A1 once. That kind of sucked. But you get that out. You have one screw back here, which again is the same 2.5 millimeter. Pull the switch out. Same deal up here. You got the 3 millimeter set screw. And the top just slides out. Now when I looked at the 06 speed, you seen tool marks back here where they just cut it. This one with the G7, because it's the more tailored piece, this is actually machine finished, which is, you know, just a nice touch. Doesn't do anything, but just a nice touch that they put a little more effort into the G7 than they did the 06 speed. Break that out. It's hard to get out because there's nice sets or nice pins are set in this. It's always harder to pop these ones out. Less chance of leaking, less chance of movement. It's a real nice setup with the pins that they did. Let's get that pin back in there. And essentially it is the same solenoid as the older ones. The critical difference is they laid it on its side and they machined the ports out of the side on the G7. And what that did is it allowed them to make the rear profile shorter, because the solenoid was laying sideways now, so it didn't have to be so tall. So it gave the whole line a little lean back look, which looked really sleek, in my opinion at least. Looked really sleek, especially with the longer body. It looked really nice. So we'll take out the battery. This always weirded me out with the G7s, the Flies. They can fit this bigger battery, but they went with the smaller one. And they put this little piece of rubber here to keep it from banging around in there. And it's just a cost savings. Like, it went from 1,000 milliamps to 500 or 650 milliamps. So they reduced the battery capacity versus the older one, but the older battery fits in the hole fine. So you can put an older battery in this thing, and you still have room to put your wires and everything, and you have a marker that has a longer battery life then. So I hated these when they did this with the smaller ones. I don't know why. It had to be purely a cost-saving technique, because it doesn't do anything for the marker. I guess it makes the marker slightly lighter, but if you're doing that, that's kind of a farce, you know, in a way. So this one's apart. Now you see the difference between the three setups. Not really that much. As you notice, the breech locking pin is gone because it goes to this cam system here. I still wish they had some kind of breech lock that went with this cam, because this does shake a little bit. But I'll get into that later. I got into that a lot on the last GAT video I put out. Let's put all this stuff away and strip out the rams. So, the two older Angels of the three, the A4 and the 05 speed, they need the ram tool to remove them. You don't exactly need a ram tool. You can use a set of jeweler's pliers like these. Because I have both, we'll do it both ways. I almost prefer to use the jeweler's pliers, because you get more leverage on it. Oh, I'm being stupid. The bolt is still in. The bolt has to be out. Well, there's a lot of lovely grease on that. That's a little gross. Still feels pretty smooth though. We'll take the bolts out too. It's a soft face bolt. This is going to be interchangeable with everything from basically the LCD up to the 05 speed. This bolt will fit in it. It's not exactly perfect for the IR3 and LCD because the slot's a little bigger, because these are the low pressure Angels. So the 04 speed, the A4 Fly, and the 05 speed, this slot arrangement works better for them. Not as much air is venting to nowhere. But the soft face is still there. That's nice. You need a soft face bolt in these markers solely because it keeps the ball stack lined up better. That was the whole point of it, was to keep the ball stack lined up better. A lot of people think it was to be softer on the paint, but no, what it really did was it allowed it to close, allowed you to close the breach. And that little gap you have, they were getting rollback issues where the ball would roll back out of the way of the eyes and out of the way of the Sensi pad, so it wouldn't read it, it wouldn't register the ball being there, and then they'd chop paint, or the ball would roll so far back, the other ball would come down with a halo hopper. The halo was a heavy force feed hopper at the time, if you're not familiar with them. It put a lot of force on the stack, and then you just blow balls up. So they did this, the little saw face that protrudes out slightly, that lets that ball stay in line so your stack stays lined up nice and well. We'll do the 05 speed next. This one's been adjusted real far in. Wow. There we go. Ah, it's missing its pad too. You need that pad there, you need the protection. This one has it, this one doesn't. We got to replace that. We'll use the jeweler's pliers. They work just as well. A lot of people thought you needed the Angel tools to work on Angels. Nah, you just need the regular, you just need real tools. It's a little more complicated than just an Allen, an Allen key set, but they really were never that bad to work on. So as you can see, there's a color variance, but they are identical rams. They work identically. I'm going to play with this one because it's not so crusty looking. Real smooth. I mean, these are not rebuildable, but they really don't die. This is when they were made in England, and they were just made to a nice spec. Really weird with this kind of ram in the 04 speed going forward, where they switched over. I think actually maybe the IR3, if I remember correctly. But this face does not have a sealing O-ring in it. It's the 04 speed and forward. This face isn't sealing. It only seals when it gets back to this point and this O-ring closes to make the seal complete. So it vents a little air as it pushes backwards. But what it does is it acts as a quick exhaust going forward, because you have an open air vent that really lets that thing shoot forward, and that's why they got rid of the snap ring setup, because they switched to this setup, and it obviously works just as well. And these are pretty efficient markers at this point in time, so it doesn't hurt too much to do that. So it's an interesting way to do it, and it worked out for them. So now the G7, because it has the cam and because that locks now, you don't have to adjust your ram position, so it's a simple pin. Oh, there you go. Again, I gotta take the bolt out. And if you look at the G7, these bolts are longer. Slightly longer, so they don't work with the older stuff, and the pin location is drastically different on them. So even though they're supposed to be soft face as well, this soft face is missing. We're gonna have to replace this bolt for them. But yeah, they're supposed to be soft faced, but they do not interchange with the older bolts. The G7s are a little bit longer of a platform. As you can see, with the extra length of the bolt, there was a reduction in hammer length. And even the whole ram's a little bit shorter. It's got the cam section, it's a little bit shorter setup there, and the bolt's longer. But these are also, this is the last quality piece that they've made, the G7 Fly. This is the last quality piece that came out of WDP. When it turned to APS and made the A1s, they were shit, basically. Let's put these all away. So the back of the gun's done. They're all broken down. We will switch over to the front. Let's get the valve tube done. These are all low pressure Angels, so the valve tube is on the right side if you're shooting the marker, and the LPR tube's on the left side. Cup seal looks okay. The older cup seals, I always like to just bathe them in grease, or oil rather. They like oil to seal and last longer. If you have a silicone-based oil like this, it likes it. It really likes working with it. And you pull the pin, take our squeegee, pull the valve out, stainless valves. Everything looks clean, everything looks right. It's the way it's supposed to be. This is your valve setup. Before they started getting weird and tricky with their valves, they had the stabilizer stem up here, which centered the spring. The hammer goes bang, and that opens up and lets the air vent through, just a regular poppet setup. So that is the A4. We got the honking big low pressure chamber here, or expansion chamber rather here. Doesn't make too much of a difference, not really, but we'll do some testing. Look at that, identical high flow valve. They didn't change anything between these generations as far as the valve train goes. That pin came out somewhere. I gotta find that. Oh, that's a little stuck. She's in there. She moved. Same valve assembly entirely. It's in good shape. Identical to the A4. Why were you such a pain in the ass? Oh well. Oh, this pin was stuck in the trigger frame. Alright guys, so we gotta pull out the front here. This one does not have the expansion chamber on it. There it is. These are the 4mm. And because this is an aluminum, make sure you fully get this thing engaged in there and set in. Because you don't want to round out the aluminum. It's very soft. And this front plug is special on the G7 because it centers the spring. The spring is now in the front of the valve, or in the front of the valve stem. It's got this cool little setup to try to help airflow go around it. It's a really neat setup. Same pin. And here's where they switched the valves over to aluminum. But they changed the air path entirely. There's no longer that collar that seals. They're using a sealing chamfered setup now with an aluminum valve body. So this is where they started changing things. This is a really nice valve. It's a very nice valve setup the way it is. It works. It was one of the good iterations, probably the best iteration they had. And it was the way forward. This is their future that they had. Then they switched over a bunch of crazy shit with the A1s. But it was going really good at this point. Alright, now the valve tube is done. Now we go to the LPR tube. These are all the same threading between all three of these markers. It's just they put a little round piece on the G7 to make it look a little classier, I guess. Pull the LPR out. Get that last washer. Got a few shims. These markers should all be around, I like to be around 60 PSI is my LPR pressure that I prefer. Gives it a nice strong push, but not overdoing it. So you pull the pin out of the bottom. Get the sacrificial squeegee in there. Now that body is completely clean and gutted. We can get it washed up and ready to go in the ultrasonic cleaner and ready for reassembly. That one was on tight, and I don't know why. I'm scared. Alright, everything looks good. That came out very nice for what it was. Again, Angel's had very good LPRs. These are great LPRs. The HPRs suck, but the LPRs were top notch. Again, around 60 PSI, 65, 70 at most. That's where you want to be on these. This one you want to be closer to 50, 55. You can still go 60, 65. It just depends. Sorry guys, camera cut out there. It just depends if you're looking for that ultimate soft shot or if you're looking for that consistency and that trouble-free use in any weather. And it just, I like to put it a little on the higher side. Maybe it makes a little more kick, but these guns are heavy in comparison to modern guns. So your kick is really irrelevant. They're just so smooth. They shoot so smooth. So these LPRs are actually a little bigger. These are all this M3 fine thread screw. This is a bigger screw in there, but if you just put it in and you pull on it, you can still get it out without getting the new tool to use it. And they switched over the Belleville washers to this style. Huh. Okay. So someone worked on this because you have two of these style Belleville washers and one of the old style Belleville washers. That's interesting. I haven't seen that before. So we got to replace that. Oh wow. So you got, all right. There's a little fuckery going on here. Huh. Someone didn't have shims and they did their own thing. I'm curious. We'll see. One thing to notice on the G7, these are not identical. On the other Angels, these caps are identical. Even on these models, you can technically put two volumizers on them, and they will help, I guess. That gives it more air to fill up. But on the G7, one of them has a protruding section where your valve stem goes into and ties into. The other one's just flat. Flat one goes with the LPR. The protruding one goes with the valve. Don't screw that up. Pin again. And some things they never change. But they do change it slightly. This is a bigger orifice in it. More air, more better, I guess was their thought process. More air going through it, faster it's going to work. Still not realizing they bottlenecked themselves at their mini reg. They just fucked up with that. And everything going forward, it just, you know, I guess they're making it better. They got a huge volume. Maybe it works a little bit, but they're fixing symptoms, not fixing problems. The one problem they never fixed, they're just compensating for it and compensating for it and compensating for it. But I don't know, you can see that really irks me. I bring it up every time. But it does bring me to an idea I have. I always thought if I remake this piece, I can make a piece that this is all cut off, and it uses a huge piston. You can put it on top with a different spring stack, and all these cartridge valve markers, you can make them shoot great in comparison to what the old one shot like. If you see the difference in the cartridge valves, where the O-rings actually go, they line up perfect. So you can use this style with more volume, more better, more air, and then you can have a huge fucking piston in there using the cartridge valve interior itself. It's an idea I'm kicking around in my head. I gotta go through a little more testing with it before I actually come out with something. But you can make these cartridge valves, if you do it right, you can make them a hell of a lot better than they were. So that's something to look for in the future from us. Alright, so these three bodies are all stripped down. We don't need to take out the rear plugs. There's a little plug in here, but that can stay. That's not doing anything. See, feel this breech? This breech is nice and tight the way it's supposed to be. This one's all loosey-goosey, so we got to fix that. This one's pretty loose as well. What we can do, so I know the one Andrew commented about there being a little rust on these rods here. We can take these out and de-rust them if we can get them out. That's a little tricky. It's not your standard operating procedure, so let's do that real quick. Pull the breeches off. Gonna have to go get a screw, but let me get these set up. Gonna go back to our standard Allens. We'll pull this one off first. We'll go in reverse order on this. You got your two weird threaded set screws in the front and back. Oh, that one's caked in paint. Always a bitch. Get the crap out of there. Oh, picked the wrong one to start with. Let's try a little oil for penetrant. None of these are too grimy though. Not bad for markers that are a decade older than a decade old. Alright, so we got the two weird screws out. We'll get them out on all three of them. Then I'll pause the camera real quick and we'll go get the proper screw we need. There are different sizes. This is more what you've seen in the IR3 and the A4 and the 05 speed and the 04 speed. This setup is more what you see in like the LCD, had something like that. I think the LED was set up like this too, with these lengths of these weird screws. I don't know, these vary by model. As do the breech rods. All the breech rods vary by model in some way. I got all the pins out. We're going to dab a little oil in here real quick. Let that sit in for a second. Now I'm saying I gotta grab a screw because the back end of the rods that are here are threaded for, basically it's a solenoid screw. It's like a 1.5 millimeter by some kind of thread pitch. I forget off the top of my head. I got a bag of them. I'll be right back with that. Alright guys, we're back with the correct screws we need to get in there. These are M2 by 0.4 millimeters. What you do is just thread them in. Like, you don't realize there's a threaded hole there. But you thread them in as far as they'll go. Now I like to take this set of pliers here. Oh man, they're tight. Oh. Sometimes you just have to tap it a few times with a hammer. Try to loosen up the issue. Bring over a different screw because we worked on that one a little too hard. And don't let these break off in there. Just fucking throw another one at it. Use the steel ones. Don't use stainless. A little stronger when they're steel. It's a real shitty setup. Use the Allen. You gotta try to just break this thing free. Man, that is tight. Might need a little more de-ruster on these. If I can get this pin out of there. Might need to let it soak overnight. But I do want to get the pin out of there. It is pretty crusty. Let's try the newest specimen first, right? Oh man. Alright, we're gonna need some de-ruster in there. Let them sit overnight before we can do something on these. Damn. She is tight. So what I'll try first, I'll just let them sit in WD-40. And if the WD doesn't do anything, I have an actual de-ruster that's safe for aluminum and all other metals. We'll let it sit in there next and see if that does anything. We'll get these out. This is especially tricky when you're trying to get these things reanodized, because this is an issue. Oh man. Yeah, they aren't willing to come out. Well, I was hoping I could show you one right now, but I'm not totally surprised. Luckily these screws are basically pennies a piece, because do not reuse them. You do not want to break one in it. Then it's just a bigger pain in the ass to try to get rid of these things. So that's fair warning to anyone trying to do it. If you're being stingy. Look at that deflection I'm putting on that. Alright, this one's spinning, which is good. You can spin it out. Hey, we got one coming. Oh, there we go. Woo! One's out. Look at the rust on that fucker. Damn, that is corroded. Alright, let's try the front. Get more oil on these too. Alright, that's too tight. We're not going to bother with this one right now. I just slipped the wrench on it. So, we'll leave that as B. We'll let it sit there. We'll let it do its work. We'll get some WD-40 on them, and we'll try them again tomorrow when it gets a little time on it. That's it for now. I'll see you guys tomorrow with more updates on these.